Hey, good evening, guys. Dr. Nathan Thompson here with Exemplify Health Center and the Wellness Way. Hope you guys are doing awesome. Happy Monday evening. I'm going to do part 2 today on fitness, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit deeper as far as how to improve fitness in minimal amount of time. And apologize, my throat is still a little bit scratchy. I need to stop talking so much. So let's talk about how to improve fitness in minimal time. And one of the things we talk about minimal time is the number one excuse people have when it comes to fitness is they are usually saying, oh, if I just had enough time, and they think that fitness is something that's going to involve an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours every single day. And a lot of times what I tell my patients is, I actually start here, you'll get the most bang for your buck, and it won't take as long as you think that it's going to. Because a lot of times people don't start because they just think that it's supposed to take a lot of time. The reality is that it isn't. And so if you are saying, hey, I'm a little bit short on time, what is the best thing for me to do? I'm going to show you, in my opinion, what some of the best things to do are, how you can do it in a minimal amount of time. But I'm also going to give it a little bit of nuance as far as who should be doing it, who shouldn't, who should actually not do it at all. And also some certain amount of people in which they should do it and hold off on doing at certain times of the month. So I'm going to go over with you a lot of different things with a lot of nuance, but let's talk about how to improve fitness in a minimal amount of time. And we're talking about, guys, again, we're talking about fitness. Again, a lot of people can't define it, so I'm going to define it for you again. But we're also not talking about, hey, I want to be an Olympic athlete, or hey, I want to be an Olympic weightlifter, or I want to be a great power lifter, or I want to be great at 5K runs, or I want to be great at cycling. No, what we're going to talk about instead is we're going to talk about longevity, and we're going to talk about how to train when it comes to just your need for fitness. And by fitness, I also mean, cardiovascular system is involved, but also the muscular system, strength, flexibility. There's other components to it. So how do you get the most bang for your buck in the shortest amount of time? That's what I'm going to go over with you today. So let's first define it, because I remember I asked the question, hey guys, what on earth is fitness? And everybody gave me 19,000 different answers, but it wasn't very clearly defined. So if you didn't watch part 1 of the video, go back and watch part 1 last week, and you'll be able to see how we define fitness, which I think is the best definition of fitness. So let's go back and look at it again so you guys can get an understanding of what I'm going to talk about here over the next couple of minutes. So what is fitness? Okay, fitness isn't just like moving your body. Fitness has to, there has to be a measurement of fitness like anything else. What you don't measure, any road will get you there. So there has to be something that you're working towards. So if you look at the definition of fitness, fitness is the capacity to do work. And I'm going to define work again across broad time and modal domains. Time domains means whether it's a 1 rep max lift that takes literally 3 seconds to do, or if it's a 1 minute workout, or if it's a 10-minute or 15-minute, heck, even if it's a 60-minute workout, your ability to do the work across broad time and then modal domains. Modal means using different types of modalities, whether that's not just running, it's not just rowing, or not just biking, or not just jump rope. It's literally any type of mode that's going to increase your work capacity. So yeah, this would be things involving a barbell, or this would be things involving gymnastics, and the amount of different types it is absolutely staggering. It goes to infinity. And so that's why when it comes to fitness, you can't just peg it into one hole saying, well, this is what it is. It's just running, or it's just lifting. But there's a whole different variety of movements. And the idea is to be pretty good at all of them, but not become a specialist in one, because as soon as you become a specialist, then you'll start to get hurt in some of the other modalities. But I put a little nuance on the end. The nuance is while maintaining your health. Okay. So while maintaining your health. And I think this is really, really important, because not a lot of people actually define that. Is what do you mean, Dr. Nate, by maintaining your health? Well, I will tell you this. Uh, I have been in fitness for a very, very long time, and yes, that was actually my major in college. My major was in sports medicine. So yes, I did have to take exercise physiology and do all that, but I also got 1,500 hours of internship when it came to athletic training. I thought I knew a lot, but then I realized I didn't know that much. I knew how to learn from a book, but I didn't know its application very well. Then I went to chiropractic school, and yes, we did learn biochemistry. We did do a ton of anatomy, actually more anatomy than even in medical school. And so that helped to get a little bit understanding of the human frame and the structure of the body. But I still wouldn't say that I knew everything about everything. And then I actually got some pretty high up certifications within CrossFit. So I started CrossFitting and looking at the application of exercise and how it improves health. And so I got a level 1, level 2, and then got a level 3. And a level 3 is actually about the top 1.5% of all CrossFit trainers, all 70,000 of them, because you really need to know the application of this training modality in order to be able to get level 3. It's not something that you can necessarily memorize. And so because we did that, we owned a lot of gyms, my wife and I, and then I wrote a lot of workouts. In fact, I was responsible for the programming, and I did probably about 2,000 different workouts for, at one point, about 300 people that were coming in per day. Okay. So it's like 300 different people per day or even like per week. So at any one time. So I got to actually see what worked, or maybe there was some that was like, man, that really didn't work. That wasn't the stimulus that I wanted to intend. And so it helped me get really good as far as programming workouts. But then putting it all together, it helped me even define it even more when I became a wellness way doctor. And the reason why when I became a wellness way doctor, um, how it helped so much is on this last end of it of saying while maintaining your health. Because let me define this, because you can get really good at doing any type of exercise. And in fact, you could even make it to the Olympics. But at the end of the day, if you lose your menstrual cycle, okay, or if you can't get out of bed, or if you experience overtraining, or if you experience high blood pressure, for example, because of overtraining, or you develop something wrong with you, chronic inflammation because you're overtraining, well, then at that point, the training defeats the purpose, because you want to make sure that you are maintaining your health. So let me show you this. What I'm going to go over with you as far as the method of training and things like that is talking about the whole body system as a whole. And so this is why, when people are doing 6 hours of quote unquote moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise, I would say, well, you're going to be spending an hour a day in fight or flight, which is going to impact your hormones. You're demanding more from your hormones. You're going to be shutting down the gastrointestinal system. And that can, over time, you can develop things like low stomach acid. You could develop problems in the gastrointestinal system. Heck, you can develop leaky gut. You can develop bacterial overgrowth, things like that. So even if you are an amazing at fitness, which is the capacity to perform work across broad time and modal domains, but at the end of the day, you are seeing your body system suffer, like your hormone system or your digestive system suffer as a result. Well, then I wouldn't call that, yes, you are fit, but we also want to maintain our health at that point. And that's why you have to be able to find a happy medium. Okay. So again, when you look at work, here's what it is. Or when you look at fitness, it's the capacity to do work. Well, what is work? Work is your ability to be able to apply force on either your body or an external object like this wheelbarrow and be able to move it a certain distance. So it's your capacity to perform that work. And that's why the different types of things that you're doing are infinite. And fitness is basically your ability to perform that work, to move that load across a certain distance. And fitness would be the ability to do that divided by the time it takes you to do that. And you want to use as many movements as possible. So that's why we went back and say, well, who's more fit, the power lifter or the 5K runner? Well, if the only thing that you were measuring was a 5K run, then of course the 5K runner is going to be more quote unquote fit. If you said, I'm going to do a 1 rep max deadlift, that's going to be our definition of fitness. Well, then, of course, the power lifter is going to be more fit because they're going to be able to apply a force, move it a certain amount of distance, while the 5K runner might not be able to apply any kind of force against a specific external object, may not be able to move it as much because they don't have the strength, they don't have the muscle mass. And at that point, you would say, well, I guess the power lifter now is more fit. But what if you put it into all different types of modalities and then took an average of how well that person did, meaning the more diverse you are, then in fact, the person who is kind of mediocre at all of those different things would be considered the one who is the most fit. And so that's why we say the ability to be able to move an object a certain distance in the least amount of time. And that object you may need to do 50 times, or that object you may move it 5,000 meters. That object, it doesn't matter, but it's your ability to perform work in the least amount of time. And that is the definition of fitness. And the cool thing is, guys, is you can actually measure it. You can measure it. And so that's why health should be measurable, but so should your fitness. That should also be measurable. So when we talked about metabolic conditioning last week, go back and watch the video if you didn't, to get an idea, because I went over actually some really cool research when it comes to metabolic conditioning. And the reason why I'm talking about exercise now is that a lot of people are trying to get into shape for June. I'm like, well, you can't get into shape in a week. And in fact, if you're really worried about June, you should have probably started a year ago. But a lot of people are interested in fitness. So let's just make sure that we're defining it. So if you're talking about getting the best fitness in the shortest amount of time, last week we talked about metabolic conditioning. Okay. So metabolic conditioning is doing basically high intensity, short duration type of exercise, whether you're doing a continuous over a period of 1 minute or you're doing it over 20 minutes, but you're basically getting your heart rate at 80% or above for anywhere from 3 to 20 minutes. But you're also doing functional movement, which is squatting, hinging, pulling, pressing, jumping, running, rowing, biking. You're doing all of those in all of these different mixed combinations, but you really can't withstand doing that every single day because you need to take some kind of rest day as well. So that's why when people are starting off, I'm like, yeah, stick to about 3 times per day. But you can move yourself as you get more adaptable to the exercise, is go to 4 times and then 5 times. And I've actually have done it 6 times per week, but also at that point, I could not maintain my health. So I had to scale it back a little bit. But these are the best type of exercises to do if you have issues with blood pressure, if you have blood sugar issues, which is a lot of people in the United States, men specifically, if you're having issues with testosterone, if you have high triglycerides, heck, and even if a lady has something that's very blood sugar related and testosterone related, even PCOS, because the first thing that you need to start doing is your insulin resistance as well. And this type of exercise is actually one of the best ways in order to start getting that down. But if you're going to elevate your heart rate that much, you're going to do it for that amount of time, then start doing a bunch of different movements that are going to get the same effect, because the result is that you're not just going to become a great runner. Yes, you become a better runner, you become a better jumper, and you'll also become stronger, and you also become more flexible because the body will adapt to the flexibility demands that you're actually placing on it. So is metabolic conditioning, is that the only thing needed for fitness? Well, the answer is that it's a good start. It's a good start, but it isn't necessarily everything. So if you look at something that would be called well-rounded fitness, well, what do you need? Yes, you do need conditioning. So this is what I'm talking about as far as metabolic conditioning. But yes, you also need to develop strength, especially when you're talking about osteoporosis. My goodness, so many people are so concerned about osteoporosis, and they're like, well, what do I need to do? And usually they don't like my answer, because the answer that I give them is that, no, don't start taking more calcium unless you want to deposit it in your arteries. You don't have a problem with calcium. What you do probably need to do is improve your stomach acid. You probably need to get more vitamin D. You probably need to be getting a couple other things as well. But also you need to stress the bone in a way that demands it to remodel and become stronger. Well, how does that happen? It doesn't happen through walking. What it happens is how it remodels is to strengthen it above what it is used to in order to force it to adapt. And that's why you do need to be on a strength program. Menopausal ladies, 100%. Absolutely. There's no question about it. And what that means is that you should be doing things like pressing, should be doing things like squatting. You should be doing things that are loading the spine, that are loading the shoulders, and are loading the hips. Because how on earth are those bones supposed to get stronger, and how are they supposed to remodel if you're not giving it a stimulus to do that? And no, they cannot remodel just by walking alone. It has to be heavier than even your body weight. So strength is important. Flexibility is important. You may not believe this, but I actually do mobility prior to working out for probably about 10 to 15 minutes. And I hate doing it, but I actually need it. And that's why as people get older, like, wow, I'm losing flexibility. I'm like, the only reason why you're losing flexibility is because you're not using it. It's not because you're getting older. It's because you're not using it. And I've seen very inflexible kids at 12 years of age. And I've seen very flexible people at 50, 60, and 70 years of age because they've kept using it. And they know the secret is when you use it, you will keep it. That's called adaptation. But then the other thing when it comes to fitness, not to be losing your health, is also the idea of recovery. So the cool thing is that, and when you start, increasing your fitness, the gift that you get is that you do need to focus more on your nutrition. You also need to focus more on recovery. So sleep and nutrition would be called your recovery, because you are stressing the body, you're tearing it down, and now you need to do the right things in order to be able to bring it back up. And this is why when people are exercising so much, yet they're not increasing their sleep and they're not paying attention to their nutrition, this is why you can start to see things start to go sideways as a result. So there is the whole idea of overtraining, which is very real, and also under recovered, which means that when you do start doing this, you better get enough sleep and you better pay better attention to your nutrition as well. Otherwise, you'll start to see things go very wrong. I've even seen it on my own lab work. In fact, go grab your labs. If you see someone who is not doing very good, check one marker, blood urea nitrogen. When you see that that is very elevated, things are not going very well with you as far as your ability to recover. It just means that you are getting pretty beat up. But that's why you have to pay more attention to your sleep, and you also have to pay more attention to your nutrition so that you are recovering. So if you want to know a little bit more about metabolic conditioning, go back and I'll explain a little bit more in part 1. So make sure that you guys watch that video. But I'm going to show you, because everybody will ask this question, is they're going to say, well, what's the best time to do metabolic conditioning? And I'm going to go over with you daily, but then I'm also going to go over with you monthly. So there's a difference between men and women who are cycling, not bicycle riding, but having a menstrual cycle, and women who are menopausal. And then there's also a little bit of a nuance when it comes to that as well. I'm going to show you some labs here in just a second. And that's going to show you, wow, this person, even though they want to exercise, is not going to benefit from it. Have I actually told people that exercise is not going to benefit you right now? Yes. And I have, when I did own gyms, I told people, please cancel your membership. It's not going to serve you right now. And a lot of times when people are losing their health, rather than focus on inflammation and stress first and foremost, they think that going to the gym is going to solve all their problems. And in many times it's not. And many times they say, don't worry about exercise or anything like that until you get to a certain point. So when it comes to the best time to be doing metabolic conditioning, well, this is according to your circadian rhythm. So this is a part of a Dutch test. The Dutch test is dried urine and total comprehensive hormones. And it is measuring your cortisol rhythm, which is how your adrenal glands secrete cortisol throughout the day. One of the reasons why you wake up is because your cortisol begins to elevate. Excuse me. So it begins to elevate. It's called a cortisol awakening response. It's what wakes you up. Well, doc, I can't wake up in the morning. That's because your cortisol is really low, and it probably your rhythm is off by 3 or 4 hours. So you should be able to go to bed on your own, and you should be able to wake up without an alarm clock. And in fact, that's what your body prefers. If you need the body to slam you, or you need an alarm clock to hit you in the face to wake you up, that just means that your cortisol is still low, and then you hit the snooze button 3 or 4 times. And I'm going to tell you, you're not really getting extra sleep when you hit the snooze button 17 times because it keeps waking you up and you're never ever go into any kind of deep sleep. So you may be asleep, but you aren't having restorative sleep. So cortisol, if you look at this, cortisol will start to elevate in the morning, okay? And then you're going to see that cortisol should naturally elevate as the morning goes. And then you're going to see as it goes into the early afternoon, you're going to see that it starts to taper back down, and you're going to see it be, approximately equivalent in the morning that it is in the afternoon. And then you're going to see that your cortisol should be at its lowest point at night, because as cortisol goes down, then you start to get a little bit more sleepy. So cortisol actually goes down, and as it goes down, it helps you to fall asleep. If you can't fall asleep at night, cortisol is very elevated. So you have to work on doing that. So that's why getting your rhythm at a right time, but then also making sure that you are secreting enough cortisol, but not too much. See, one is going to be low. Cortisol is going to be low when you're inflamed. Cortisol is going to be very elevated when you're under a high stress state. And so now when you look at this, well, when I work out, it's going to elevate my cortisol. What elevates the cortisol? The dip in blood sugar. What causes a dip in your blood sugar? Well, one of them is going to be doing exercise. Whether it's doing moderate intensity or high intensity, it's going to cause a dip in your blood sugar, which is then going to demand the body to release cortisol in order to mobilize any kind of stored sugars. So if you look at where this rhythm is, really where you want to work out ideally is when your cortisol levels are at its highest. So that's why late morning is always going to be the best. That's why the second best time would be in the early morning. The third best time would be in the late afternoon. And the absolute worst time to work out would be in the evening. All right. That is the worst time to work out because cortisol needs to be low, and then you're elevating it again. And that's where you can develop over time. You can develop some problems with your cortisol rhythm. And no, it's not going to happen just overnight, but it can happen over time. And then it starts interrupting with your ability to be able to recover from the workout. So the best time is going to be late in the morning. Second best is early morning. Third best time is in the later afternoon. And the worst time is in the evening. And I have gotten to the point, if I miss the workout, for whatever reason, I don't go after 8 o'clock at night, because I'm just like, this is just not going to benefit my ability to be able to recover. So I'm not going to elevate my heart rate at that point. So what about daily? So I talked about daily. Yes, this applies to men. Yes, this applies to women as well. But then what about monthly? So what about over the course of a 30 or 31 day cycle? So monthly, how many times should you do it? I would start off at doing it 3 times a week with the day of rest in between. And as you get better, you can move yourself up to doing 5 days a week. Typically, how I do it is 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, and 1 day off. So that I have 2 days of rest in between, and it comes out to 5 days per week. Now, if I'm going to be doing a competition, which I recently got myself a little bit more into, then I may do it 6 times a week, but I also know I'm only going to be doing it for a short amount of time. So you do need the rest in between. Now, what about men? So is there a time in the 30 days or 31 days that a man should not work out? The answer is no. So a man can work out all month only because his main hormone is testosterone, and he is not going to be worried about having a menstrual cycle. He's not going to be worried about hurting his progesterone levels, which is needed in order to help support the cycle in the second week. So cycling women, as a general rule, guys, cycling women, when you should avoid doing high intensity exercise or even long duration type of exercise, should be during week 3. And even sometimes I've told people even during week 1 as well, while you are menstruating. So doctor, you tell me that I should avoid in my 3rd week of my menstrual cycle, I should avoid doing high intensity exercise. The answer is yeah, you should. And if you understand hormones, is that if you are constantly bombarding yourself with an increased need of cortisol, your body's going to rob it from somewhere, and it can rob it from progesterone. It's called a progesterone steal. And so that's why if you're already having menstrual issues, a lot of times adding exercise, particularly if you are short on your cycle, Adding exercise will only make it worse. It doesn't mean that you can't work out though. It just means don't elevate your heart rates to extreme levels. So what can you do on week 3? Well, you could do things like weightlifting, like bodybuilding, anything that doesn't raise your heart rate. And so, yeah, you can be doing some things with with bodybuilding. You just don't want to have to expend so much adrenal energy if your body needs to keep your progesterone levels at a certain level. So you can do bodybuilding, you can do walking, you do yoga, but I wouldn't be doing things that's going to demand a bunch of progesterone, especially if you want to have a good like menstrual cycle, especially moving into week 4. If you do it wrong in week 3, week 4 can be an absolute disaster for so many women. So cycling women, typically we would say avoid week 3. Some of you maybe even week 1 while you're menstruating. And then post-menopausal women, well, because your hormone profile changes and you're not so dependent on progesterone, then you don't have to work your workout around your menstrual cycle so that you can do it pretty much all month. Okay. So your hormones change. You're going to see a dip and you're going to see a decline in hormones, and you're not going to see that your hormone levels are changing throughout the month. They're going to stay consistent after that. Now, here's the big nuance. It's if. So if your adrenal glands can handle it, okay? If your adrenal glands can handle it. So there's this whole idea where people think their adrenal glands are so fatigued and that, they're just running on empty and whatnot. And I want you not to run and say that you have adrenal fatigue. What I want you to think about instead is when you say your adrenals can't handle it, maybe what's the issue is that you're very inflamed. And if you look at cortisol, it can convert into the anti-inflammatory hormone known as cortisone, which is really interesting because you guys ever see, wow, if I have autoimmunity or if I have, an inflamed joint, they do a steroid injection, or I go on oral steroids, and wow, that really knocked out the inflammation. And so your body can already do that. And so what happens is instead of having cortisol, you could go in and measure it, you're going to have a high level of cortisone. And that means, hey, you got something that's really bothering the immune system. And that's what's cool that you can actually measure. And that's why when you look at people who are on steroid medications, one of the side effects is extreme fatigue. So when we say, hey, if your adrenal glands can handle it, what we're really talking about is more like, hey, are you really, really inflamed? And that's another discussion, like our inflammation talk, that we'll talk about, hey, here's where the inflammatory triggers are actually coming from. So, excuse me, I'm going to give you an example. So here's someone who loved to work out, okay, but she was extremely fatigued all the time. So 57-year-old woman, low energy, low fatigue, loved working out, and in fact, loved doing the beach body workouts that were like 25 minutes long, 5 days a week, and really just pounding the long duration type of exercise. But she noticed that over time, the fatigue never got better, but she was also putting on a lot of weight, specifically around the butt and around the thighs. She couldn't figure it out. So guess what she did? She had to go, and she thought she had to exercise even more, which is just this terrible cycle that so many women get into. And the reason why she was actually putting on weight is because if you look at her hormone levels, even at menopause on a Dutch test, it should be in the purple. And it was even way below that. Testosterone should be right in between the yellow stars. And it's that. So low testosterone, low progesterone, low estradiol. And then if you even look at her total DHEA production is coming from the adrenal glands, and then look at her free and metabolized cortisol, and look at how low all of these hormones were. And if you think about it, after menopause, these hormones are produced, specifically estrone and progesterone, they're produced by the adrenal glands. So you can see that all of the hormones coming from the adrenal glands after menopause, you can see how low that they were. And you would look at this and say, wow, I think you have adrenal fatigue, but she didn't. What she had instead was she had something that was assaulting her immune system. And lo and behold, when we started digging a little bit more, she had an extreme amount of mold toxicity. And in fact, when we started digging a little bit deeper, the problem actually started a long time before that, because you saw that she had changes with her lung function. She had changes with kidney function. She had changes in the gastrointestinal system. And just think about where she was getting that mold exposure to. Where do you get mold exposure at? Primarily, if it's like in the house, you're getting it through the sinus passages. And then also, you also are going to have some issues when it comes to lung function as well. If you're ingesting mold, you can develop some gastrointestinal issues, and this can become very systemic. So if you look at at her hormone profile, this was actually someone I said, no, I don't want you fasting. I don't want you doing any kind of long duration exercise or even short duration exercise. Yeah, I mean, stick to walking and yoga until we get this immune system issue under control. And as she started to recover, she started to get her energy back. But that was only until her body was able to handle what was actually assaulting her immune system. So I want to show you guys what it looks like just for me. Take it for whatever it's worth, but you can see what a typical week of training looks like for me. So I am not trying to go to the Olympics. I am not trying to become the strongest person in the world. I am not trying to be great at running a 5K. And the reason why is I don't need to do any of those. You know what I need to do? I need to be strong, but I don't need to be the strongest person in the world. And I also need to be able to keep up with my kids. That's why I train now. And so I have been doing it for 13 years. And I want you to think of it when you put in the initial groundwork, that it doesn't take as much work in order to be able to maintain it. So here's what I did when people say, I can't believe 60 minutes, that's, way too, it's not enough, because the World Health Organization and the CDC, who has been so historically wrong, I mean, pitifully wrong over the last 3 years. Yet for some reason, we still look at them as the source of everything in regards to health. And if you've been that wrong over the last 3 years, I actually think it should be probably beneficial if we just either stop listening to her or dissolve the CDC for all I care. Okay. So if you look at what I did over the last week, I think this was about 2 weeks ago, on day one, I did a 16-minute workout. So as many reps as possible. So I did what is known as 2 wall walks. You can take a snapshot of this and look up the movements. You can find these on YouTube. 8-calorie bike known as an echo bike, and then 12 single arm dumbbell snatches. So I did as many rounds and reps as possible in 16 minutes. In day 2, I did 5 rounds for time, 20 push-ups, a 50-foot lunge, 20 hollow rocks, a 50-foot lunge back. And then I did, after I did that, 5 100-foot shuttle runs. So I did run. I hated it, but I did actually do some running during that. So I did 5 rounds for time. I think it took me about 17 minutes to do that. So I'm at right now, when you look at this, about 34, 35 minutes. Day 3, I actually did some strength. So I did some strength work. And so I did 3 reps times 8 of a back squat, but I also pared it down into a shorter amount of time. So rather than do 3 reps and wait for 6 minutes, like a lot of people do, is I only gave myself about 1:30 of rest. So that helped me to warm up and help me go into doing working sets. And it lasted about 12 minutes doing that. And that was all that I did when it came to working on any kind of strength. And then I did 3 25 or 5-minute AMRAPs. So I had 15 minutes of work with rest in between. So 25-calorie bike. And then I did as many pull-ups as possible in the remaining 5 minutes. And then I did a 25-calorie bike, as many push-ups as I could in the remaining minutes, then a 25-calorie bike and as many air squats as possible in the remaining 5 minutes. And then I was done. Day 4, day 7, I didn't do anything other than go out for a little bit of a walk. So, and walking's not necessarily bad for you guys, but it's not fitness. It's more of an expression of fitness. So when people say, hey, do you ever do any, zone 2 training, of moderate intensity? Yeah, but I call that a rest day. And so I may walk or I may go on a light jog, but I'm actually doing that to move my body. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's contributing a whole heck of a lot to my fitness. So day 5, I did strength training again, 5 sets of 5 reps of deadlifting. And I went pretty heavy doing that. I gave myself about 3 minutes of rest in between each set. And then I did 5 rounds a time, single arm thrusters on the right, 25 foot overhead lunge with my right, then switched and did 8 single arm thrusters on the left and a 25-foot overhead lunge. 5 rounds of doing that. It was miserable. And it took me about 9 minutes to do that. So it was about 9 minutes of exercise. So therefore I'm at 33, 43, 48, and then I'm at another 9 minutes. So I'm at about 57 minutes of working out. And then on day 6, I also did some strength work, and I did a barbell heavy clean and jerk. I think working up to about 255 pounds. It took me about 15 minutes to work up to that. And then I did 4 rounds for time of a 30-calorie row and then 30 V-ups, which is basically a core strengthening. And I think it took me about 16 minutes. So I think I was at about 113 or about 73 minutes or so of total work for the week. So yes, sometimes I'm only at 50, sometimes I'm at 70, but if you took an average over a year, it comes out to about 60 minutes or so, give or take a couple of minutes each week. So total time was spent, conditioning was 75 minutes or so, and total strength sessions were at about 3 strength sessions at about 30 minutes. And 30 minutes was basically the time it took to warm up to my working weight and then perform the working sets. It took me about 30 minutes in total. So guys, when you really look at this, when you say like, how long do you spend at the gym? Usually on some days it's an hour. On some days it might be only 45 minutes. And we're talking about total time spent, not total time exercising. But if you look at the total time exercising, it really was about 75 minutes, and then 3 strength sessions at about 30 minutes from warm up, and then the actual working sets. So you may be saying right now, wow, that sounds really hard. But that sounds really hard. I don't think that I could do that. Maybe not, but you work towards it. So there's so many people, as soon as it sounds hard, they just give up. And I think that's why we're so soft as a country. Women generally aren't soft, but men, my goodness, men, let me just tell you right now, is you're freaking soft. You are soft, or you've let yourself become soft. One of the reasons why I do it, yes, I want the health benefits, but I also want the mental training benefits of doing hard things every single day. Because I know if I do hard things every day, then I'm much more willing to do hard things in other areas of my life. But you're like, well, no way that I could deadlift, no way that I could squat. There's no way that I could do a pull-up. There's no way that I could do that. Well, you might not be able to do now, but what you want to do is you want to work up to that, to that goal. So one of the first things that you always introduce is you always introduce sound mechanics. That's why I said, hey, have you ever deadlifted? People are like, you'll hurt your back. No, you won't. Not if you have sound mechanics. So hire someone to teach you how to do it correctly. So you first employ sound mechanics, then you're able to employ sound mechanics consistently. And then once you have sound mechanics perform consistently, then you start ramping up the intensity. And so that's why if you do that according to, this type of recipe, you're not going to get hurt all the time. You're not going to get injured. And in fact, guys, I will tell you the most injurious sport out there is running. It's running. Look at the amount of injuries, and it's running. And why is that? Is because people have terrible mechanics. They have problems with mobility in their ankles. They have problems with hip flexibility. They have very weak hip flexor strength. They can't squat their body weight. And then they think that running is going to take care of everything, and even look at your running mechanics. And when those are off, it's just a recipe for you getting hurt. So it's mechanics, it's consistency, and then it's intensity after that. But you have to start from somewhere. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And I tell people, who cares if it takes a long time to get there? At least you're moving forward. But people want results in a week, and it's just not possible. So I'm still getting results 13 years later and 13 years older as well. So when people say, "Oh, enjoy your youth," I say, "No, I'm preserving it." And that's why this whole idea of aging is so misconstrued, because of we're taught that life is supposed to go downhill at 30 years of age, and you start acting according to your belief system. But at 46 years of age, I'm actually just as strong, or not stronger, than I was when I was 26 years of age. So when people say enjoy your youth, as if they have some kind of special knowledge about getting older and that it's an inevitability, I tell them, no, I'm actually preserving my youth, and you should do the same as well. So let me give you an example of someone who actually, this is exactly what they needed, and these are some of the results. So I had a patient who came in, this was about a year and a half ago, and he said, "Dr. Nate, I have pain all over my body. I can't do anything. I've let myself go." He's like, "If you could just help me to be able to walk a mile without hurting and feeling tired, I'll love you forever." And I looked at him and I said, I'm like, "You are going to love me then, because my goal for you is I want you to be able to run a 5K as a celebration of your fitness, not to do it all the time, but just think of what will happen, and I'll get you even farther than what you believe that you can." Now, here's what's interesting is that when you look at some of his markers that were on some of his testing that we did, is you can see extremely high elevated liver enzymes. Liver was not working very well. Fatty, fatty liver disease, high C-reactive protein, very inflamed, testosterone at a 48-year-old at 171. In fact, I looked at him and I said, "Wow, your testosterone is at 171. I bet you're a great roommate." If you know where I'm going with this, and not a great lover, but more of a great roommate. And testosterone is a big issue in men over 40 years of age. And then you can see that he was also pre-diabetic. Okay. So pre-diabetic, low testosterone, highly inflamed, fatty liver that's going on. One of the first things that we did with him is I said, "Hey, I want you to do a 3-day fast." And he said, "That sounds really hard." I'm like, "It is. But I just need to make sure that you're on board. So do a 3-day fast." Everyone's going to ask who should do it and who shouldn't. For a guy that looks like this, 3-day fast is a great place to start. I also did some food allergy tested with him. And then we put him on a very specific nutrition plan, lots of meats, lots of low glycemic vegetables. And then I said, "I only want you to eat for 6 hours a day. I want you to fast 18 hours a day." And I've gone over this. There's nothing magical about doing it. But what's magical is that he just didn't constantly eat all the time, and meats and veggies only. He avoided food allergies that we tested for. He took specific things to help with his blood sugar in order to help lower triglycerides and things like that. And then he started out doing metabolic conditioning just at 3 times per week. So here's the cool thing. And this is a post test of about 4 months. And so you can see at 4 months when we tested again, hemoglobin went from pre-diabetes down to 5.2, C-reactive protein in the 3s down to 1. The testosterone actually went up from 171 all the way up to 417. Isn't that amazing? So testosterone goes down as you get older. No, it didn't. He got older, yet his testosterone got better. There's no way that you can reverse any kind of type 2 diabetes. Well, we actually just did. There's no way that you can lower inflammation. We have no idea why C-reactive protein elevates. Yeah, we do. We know why that is. And again, this was all based off of things that he did in his lifestyle. Yes, we did a couple of other things as well. So he ended up losing 75 pounds. This was over the course of probably about 7 or 8 months. And then the cool thing is he was able to not just run a 5K or slosh through it, but he was able to run a 5K the entire time. And actually, we measured his deadlift strength, and it went from about 165 pounds when he started up to 365 pounds. So isn't that cool? And in fact, here's someone who's gotten stronger and gotten younger, even though chronologically he's gotten older. Okay. So, and guys, I was the same way too. This is a picture of with my daughter, is now 14 years of age. This was when she was 1 year of age. And you can see me and I look a little bit hefty, a little bit beefy, a little bit inflamed. And then this is me. This was me at about 32 years of age, and this is me at 40 years of age. So you see the difference between the two because I live it. And one of my passions is this: no man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. It's a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and the strength of which his body is capable. And I want you guys to think of this: is I want you to think of, as I leave you with this, is think about this idea, is because I am constantly bombarded with people who want me to promote their products, even though natural products, and I won't. Because if you think about it, we have today more medical procedures, we have more medications, we have more natural gadgets, gizmos, more supplements than ever before, yet we continue to get sicker and sicker and sicker. And maybe the reason why is that we're they're making things too complex versus looking at simple solutions. So guys, stop looking for the complex solution when the answer potentially could be very, very simple. And guys, if you guys are watching from the Chicagoland area, I know that the date on here is wrong, but if you want to work with Exemplify Health Center and me individually, please make sure that you go to the top of the page if you're on Facebook, or you can go to our link tree if you're on Instagram, or even on YouTube. You'll see our link tree up at the top, and get registered for our next event. That's going to be inflammation in the Chicagoland area. This is an in-person event. I believe that the date is June 6th. Don't quote me on that, but this will be on a Tuesday in June, and it's an in-person event at 6 o'clock. And we're going to talk about inflammation first and foremost, and why it is the spark that leads to literally every single chronic degenerative disease that is out there. And so get registered for that, specifically if you want to work with us on a one-on-one basis in person. And I know that somebody had asked as well. Someone had asked, are you doing anything online? We're working on it right now to be able to help people do an inflammation event online, and be able to do a webinar in regards to that, and work with some select people remotely that are in the continental United States. So guys, please make sure that you go get registered for that as well. And that's all I got for tonight. So guys, I hope you enjoyed. I hope, again, please share this video. Please send it to someone who you know that can benefit from it. And guys, I always appreciate when you like, when you follow, when you share all the content that we do. I'll be back next week, not on Memorial Day, but I'll make an announcement when I'm going to do it. It'll probably be a question and answer, maybe on Sunday night. So look forward to seeing you guys then. Be well, be blessed, and remember who you are.